My name is Sarah Spiegel, and I am a singer. I've been singing pretty much my whole life. Growing up in Jersey, my dad especially had such a huge record collection, and I'd listen to all these Broadway shows. And I remember when I was 4 years old, my parents took me to see Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat on Broadway. For 2 hours, my mouth was just hanging open watching these performers. That's when I think the bug hit me to become a singer, to become a performer. Was around 4 years old. I knew very young. The most important thing I think my mother taught me was just about compassion, being a good person, keeping your ego in check, especially in show business. She told me, just be a compassionate person. There's a lot of crappy people out there, but you can have a thick skin, but have a warm heart. About a year ago, my mother, who was very healthy and vibrant, one night she woke up and she just had a little pain in her side, and it was really hurting her. And she thought maybe I should go to the hospital and get it checked out. Very early in the morning, my father brought her to her general practitioner, who advised that my mom should just go to the emergency room because they'll do a myriad of tests and find out what it is. They decide that they're going to do a scan, and when they did the scan, they just saw a little shading on her liver, which they didn't know what it was. We found out later it could most likely be just the passing of a gallstone. That's what probably was causing my mom's pain, gallstones. But they decide to do a non-invasive laparoscopy. And a laparoscopy is just 3 little nicks in your stomach, and you're supposed to be out in 30 minutes. And my mom goes in for this, just, taking doctor's advice. She goes in for this non-invasive procedure, and instead of being out in 30 minutes, she was actually put on life support. I've only known my mother to be vibrant and alive, and okay, she's on life support right now, but she's gonna be okay. Not a thought in my mind thought any different. What ultimately caused my mother's death was medical malpractice. My last conversation with my mother, we had to do the whole, blink once for yes and twice for no, and she still had all this life in her eyes, and she'd be sarcastic and roll her eyes and stuff. One night, my mom and dad and I are in the hospital, and they happened to have a musical on TV, and we were watching it, and the show was done, and at this time, my mom couldn't even speak. And she, with all of her strength, put her hand out to me. And I went over to her, and then she put her other hand out to my father, and he went over to her, and she embraced us. And she couldn't speak, but all she motioned was, as best as she could. And it's the last time I really remember her having her wherewithal to tell us one last time that she loved us so much. I was taking copious notes, and as the days progressed, I was realizing that so many doctors were telling me different stories. I was blown away by my mother was assigned 15 doctors, and I had to find out who did what. This is the kidney guy, and this is the lung guy, and this is the surgeon, and her it was just all these names, and I had to find out what they did. This strange oncologist shows up, and she takes my father and I aside and just tells me that my mother has stage 4 inoperable gallbladder cancer, and she has 6 months to live. The first red flag was that when the oncologist left the room, the nurse on duty came up to my father and I and actually told us that oncologist had no right to tell you that your mother has stage 4 cancer. The laparoscopy was just done yesterday. There's no way she could know. She goes, I'm just saying you should get a second opinion. We had brought her to another hospital and they were testing her for cancer every day and they were not finding a trace of it. This all happened in such a short amount of time and my world is just turned upside down and you're just trying to believe that these people are telling you the truth. And at the time, I thought that was the truth. I had somebody research that surgeon that had done this operation on my mother. And we found out that he has such a high rate of medical malpractice claims. If I would have known that this surgeon had 8 malpractice suits where almost everybody died, a few similar to my mother, do you think I would let that surgeon touch my mother? When my father and I finally got all those medical records and we're going through it, there are so many lies and deceptions, and we realized that it was a big cover-up, and this was one of the most epic cases of medical malpractice. And then I found out that medical malpractice is so abundant. They say upwards of 1 million people die a year. I'm trying to tell the story of my mother because I do not want what happened to her to happen to anybody else. I'm trying to get passed with Congress. I'm calling it the Fran Spiegel Right to Know Act, where there will be more transparency in the medical field. For example, when my mom goes in for a very simple, non-invasive laparoscopy, the hospital has to hand you information about the surgeon that's about to do this operation. The last thing I got to do with my mother, it was actually the night that she got the little pain in her side. We went to the movies. When we came out of the movie theater, there was a rainstorm that had just happened, and there was this beautiful rainbow in the sky. And my mom had her umbrella, and I have a video of this where she just starts singing in the rain, and she's in the parking lot, and she even does a little funny soft shoe. And that was the last time that I felt like I was with my mom, you know? I know that my mother's spirit is always here, and I talk to her all the time, and I know that she's guiding me. And she knows that my father and I just don't want her death to be in vain. We don't want her to be another statistic. And she knows that I'm fighting so hard to get her justice so that what happened to her does not happen to anybody else. I think one of the #1 things we need to do is just get it out in the media about how prevalent medical malpractice is, and something needs to change.